Anyway, this opened with the best segment of wrestling television that I have seen in many a day, young feller. I remember back in the old days. No, it had it. I will sidetrack for a second because we're not going to talk about much of Raw because the rest of it was quite sad for the most part, and something made me sad at the end. But I want to give some context to the first part because it was fucking beautiful. A member of the cult of Cornette, who's I don't have his name here in front of me, but I did send him a thank you in the mail, sent me, Brian, I don't know how many discs is there, like a 6 or 8 disc compilation of early 80s Georgia wrestling of TBS when it was Georgia Championship Wrestling, 1980, 81, 80, you know the era.
Great stuff, yeah.
And some of this I'd seen, some of it I have on a VHS tape somewhere in this house that I probably won't live long enough to find. But here it is all together. So as a palate cleanser from the modern wrestling that I've been watching, which good, bad, or indifferent, you have to, everybody has to admit that it's mostly either one style or another today. Either you got the WWE product or you got the AEW / ROH / even TNA. A lot of those guys, it's the more indie style product, and there's not a lot of variety anymore. And I put one of the Georgia DVDs in, and just not only the variety, the different kinds of matches, but the faster pace and the level of aggression or level of simulated aggression. But it didn't seem simulated. It just a more, and you can go back some of the hot stuff in the Attitude Era with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Imagine that, legitimate aggression. But, you know, Flair and Ronnie Garvin in the 80s, we were talking about on TBS, legitimate aggression. And finally, we see some modern legitimate aggression here that gets the people up. And it doesn't, I guess that's what I'm saying is the pace for everybody that says old time wrestling used to be so slow. When you were watching TV matches with the top guys and TV angles, they were fucking moving. And whether it was the high spot match where there's Terry Gordy at 300 pounds taking those fucking arm drags from DiBiase, or Steve Kern and Kevin Sullivan doing the fucking mix of amateur and pro wrestling where you kind of can't see through it, or the crazy bullshit and there's Plowboy Frazier dropping legs on people. It was all different, but there was aggression and there was a pace to it, and there was legitimate urgency when people were trying to do things to each other. Then now everybody, they bonk them on the head once and they're laying there, and now everybody's taking their time and they're milking more than the American Dairy Association. Have I established this state of mind that I'm in about the modern stuff? So now when it was different, when you see people that actually are trying to get people into a fucking fight and look like they're trying to get at each other and everybody's playing their part, to use the Hollywood reference, it's refreshing, right? And I mean, have you ever done that? Gone back and looked at one of your old tapes or videos or whatever and immediately said, God damn, it's a different level of animation amongst the participants.
I think a lot of it goes back to Vince McMahon and the whole idea of drawing everything out forever. And as the shows got longer, everything got longer. Because when you really think about how many hot things you saw for so many years that lasted 5 minutes or less, actually, the actual fighting part may have lasted a minute or 2 minutes or less. There was buildup around it. But now things go on forever. Guys from the world champion to anyone else on the card could just be laying there, dead, and no one comes to check on them. And then they get security guards that are clearly wrestling students. On Raw this week, At one point, the security guards are running around, and behind the barricade, you see the real security guards who are all old men. They're all old men who look like they're 6'6". And I'm like, I'd put my money on that old man against all those wrestling students running around there as fucking security guards.
And the people in the arena can see them, and they're like, send in the fucking reinforcements over there.
The fight's right in front of them, and they have their back turned and their arms crossed, and they're looking at the crowd. I'm like, man, those are the tough guys.
But that's the thing is that, and yes, Vince and a lot of people with a superficial understanding of the wrestling business are going to say, but Jim, we've been told by the veterans that less is more. And then you'd say, don't do everything. And I'm not saying doing every move, or I'm not saying hitting people with a goddamn weapon 15 times. I'm saying even when the level of aggression and animation is, even if you're in a fucking hold or somebody's got your arm, you're fighting it and you're trying to get out of it, and it looks like the other guy's trying to keep control of you. And then when you burst into the running spot, one guy's off balance while the other guy's in control, but there's the arm drag and blah, blah, blah. Then you pay the spot off and give them room to breathe. Or maybe the baby face needs to fucking approach you, but the heel's leaning through the ropes, and then they get into something to keep the fucking pace going. Doesn't mean commit aggravated mayhem and attempted homicide every 30 seconds. And in angles, again, like you said, don't just have people laying there while you walk around, and you just know that nobody's ever going to stop you from doing this because it's all fake. There needs to be senses of urgency. And that's when, in this first segment, which we'll finally get to here now, with Punk and with Seth Rollins, the people were reacting to it because when you get them to a place where they can suspend their disbelief and they can say, this shit has gotten out of hand. It's going to go on. Oh shit, look at that. That's where you get them. And also by both people being legitimately over and not just some fucking average simpleton on the indie level show having another of the constant pull aparts that they have in every segment. The people sit there with their hands crossed and look at that. But when it's two top guys on a hot show and they lay it out and execute it this well, the people they were chanting for a pull apart. This is awesome. But anyway, I've got ahead of myself. We got to talk about the promo first. Punk comes out, walks through Gorilla, clears off the desk, stands on it. He's pissed off. He's going to give his State of a Union address and address his enemies, which right now is everybody. And he starts with The Rock, who he calls a bald fraud. And again, you would like to think that, that everybody was in on this, but I'm thinking that maybe he might have slipped a one or two of these in. Dwayne hasn't seemed like he wanted to participate in anything that makes him look bad these days. And Punk was getting to the meat of the matter. So again, we're skirting the lines here, folks. We're walking a tightrope. But Punk's story is that he marched through hell for opportunities, and Mr. Midlife Crisis walks in and thinks he's a bigger star than everybody and a blah, blah, blah. And I'd say it to his face, but he hasn't graced us with his presence to do. Then he was looking at the camera. He hadn't graced us with his presence. He said, to do your bullshit, hit your arm and pretend you care about this business. Do you, again, Brian, we talked about it earlier. Do you think that The Rock has one of those Danish electric fucking stimulators up his taint that he can hit and get the goosebumps, the goose pimples, as Mama Cornette would say?
I think Punk has gone too far. I mean, who is he to question one man's excitement over and over again in a really pretentious and fake manner that never seems genuine, and everything about him just seems to be completely full of shit? I think, who the hell is Punk? If not me, who? I don't know what the hell I'm saying. But I agreed with everything he was saying. And, we just saw The Rock at that press conference say, guys have to go out there, say what you feel. I want guys
Yeah.
to say what you feel. And Punk was the next promo we saw on TV. So maybe he felt a lot of this. And of course, Punk is really good about saying shit that either he feels or we think he feels, and then going right back into the story seamlessly. And he did it here.
Yes.
And
he also he said, "I've never been so desperate as to have to wear a fake title belt and blah 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 and sell my soul." And then he goes to Cena. Well, now you can't see me. We can all see through you. And this was great. You stole something from me. And that now it's proved that John Cena has been selling all these kids bullshit. And that's kind of, that's a shame. Again, I wondered why, if it's not a guy that's got a 3-year run with a spot like that, instead you turn him to Babe Ruth. Suddenly it's revealed that he's a goddamn horrible human being before he plays his last game for the Knickerbockers or whoever the fuck.
The Yankees?
Whoever they were. And then he says,
yes.
"I'm going to get my hands on both of you bald frauds and you're going to make a wish I never did." And God damn.
I was wondering who's going to use Make-A-Wish, and he was right there with
he was the next promo. But the thing, his delivery and his tone and the way he's animated, and he's spitting these words out with some contempt when he's met. You feel it. This is what I'm talking about, people. This is how you do it. Uh-huh. And then finally he gets to now the man of the hour, Seth Rollins. "Becky Lynch, come get your man before I do, or I'll put him in a wheelchair." And immediately the music plays. And even though Seth came out hot, I wish Seth had just run on. They don't need the music. People would have recognized him. And Punk ran to meet him in the entranceway. And boom, 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 here they started. And that's what I'm talking about. The pull apart with the breakaways and the into the ring and out of the ring and across the desk. And they had peaks and valleys, and and Punk's facials are so animated, and there's animosity in his animation. And fucking they're snatching and grabbing at each other. And all the agents and the referees and Pierce is out there trying to get them apart, and they kept it going. And the crowd, as they kept going, got more into it, and they were chanting, "Holy shit!" And this is awesome. From a fucking a pull apart is something that the wrestling fans unfortunately see a lot these days. But this had, as I said, all of the elements, and they did this for about 6 or 7 minutes, which is a million fucking years, by the way, even for well-conditioned athletes in a fucking pull apart. And it's more energy than you would think. They'd rather be in there hitting the ropes and taking hip tosses and backdrops and enzuigiris and things like that than that pull apart, because it'll fucking drain you, because you got all those people are on you in some cases almost for real. And I've seen wrestling school students that weren't exactly smart to the fucking program that actually pulled the fucking guys apart and wouldn't let them fight when they wanted to. They were supposed to. So, but point is, they kept this going. The people were into it, and finally they split them up. And Seth was in the entranceway, and they had Punk over at the ring. But this now, again, we got to see this fucking these two. Say what you want about the rest of the business, but I think these two are mad, Brian.
It was a week ago that I was looking forward to a potential Logan Paul CM Punk thing. And I said, I'm kind of sick of the Rollins stuff and the McIntyre stuff, and I'm not sick of it anymore. They did the stuff to heat it up because of what happened at the Elimination Chamber, which Cena took advantage of. Punk was right there in the mix. He could have won. And, we talk so much about Cody's chase for whatever it was, his dream. CM Punk's been talking about wanting to be in the main event since he's been back. So there's that whole big story that can go on for a while. I thought this was tremendous, and the fans were super into it. It was super hot. And it kept going, and it was action. And because there were so many people there, the action seemed so big. I thought it was great. This is a great opening.
Yeah, they again, it was a scene of chaos that even the people up in the cheat seats, they cheated to get in. Up in the cheap seats, they can see all of that fucking scurrying going on, and it's just, it adds to the excitement, and it builds if they care about the guys involved, and if they again, if it was just guys taking bumps and falling through furniture, they couldn't do that for 7 fucking minutes at that pace. But this was orchestrated to where that it had its peaks and valleys. You think it would be over, and then it starts back again. Excellent timing on everybody's part. And again, we want to see that, but now I'll spoil it now because not to be disconnected. And later on in the back, Seth cut a fucking promo screaming at Adam Pearce, and Pearce said, okay, next week on Raw in Madison Square Garden, Seth Rollins versus CM Punk in a cage. They're giving it away. Well, I mean, they get paid $500 million for television, but they're giving it away. What are these guys going to be doing at WrestleMania if they've got a cage match next week on television on Netflix?
Well, again, it's from the Garden. I think there is still a special connotation about anything that's from the Garden.
Well, yes, but now that we've seen, are they going to do an angle in a cage match that might pretend? I want to see Punk and Seth probably more than I want to see either one of them do anything else at WrestleMania. After all of this nonsense going on, all of this bullshit taking place.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
I wish you would.
As a side topic from this, what's Roman Reigns doing for WrestleMania?
Boy, he could come over here. We're going to have dip and chips.
If I asked you who he's working with, do you have any idea? Because I don't.
No. But they got 6 or 7 weeks to tell us, because they're in the middle of, or toward the end of April this year. Is it going to be, what's going to go on with Solo and Jacob?
Is Roman going to get pulled into the Is he going to get pulled into the Cody Cena Rock stuff?
Would he potentially be the special referee that Rock would assign, and then have a moral dilemma in front of him, whether to follow his family and the final boss or do what he thinks is right, blah, blah, blah.
That'd be tough, having a moral dilemma and turning to Heyman for advice.
Oh.
Well, that was the opening segment of WWE Raw, a memorable Raw.